It is now known that the Sumerian or Sumerian civilization had blossomed in what is now Iraq almost a millennium before the beginning of the Pharaonic age in Egypt, both to be followed later by the civilization of the Indus Valley in the Indian subcontinent. It is now also known that the Sumerians were the first to write down in the annals and tales of gods and men from which all other peoples, including the Hebrews, obtained the tales of creation of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the deluge, the Tower of Babel, and of the wars and loves of the gods, as reflected in the writings and recollections of the Greeks, Hittites, Canaanites, Persians, and Indo-Europeans. As all these olden writings attest, their sources were even earlier texts, some found, many lost. The volume of such early writings is staggering. Not thousands, but tens of thousands of clay tablets have been discovered in the ruins of the ancient Near East. Many deal with or record aspects of daily life, such as trade or workers' wages and nuptial contracts. Others, found mostly in palace libraries, constitute royal annals. Still others, discovered in the ruins of temple libraries or of scribal schools, constitute a group of canonized texts, a secret literature that were written down in the Sumerian language and then translated to Akkadian, the first Semitic language, and then other ancient languages. And even in those early writings, going back almost 6,000 years, references are made to quote-unquote lost books, text inscribed on stone tablets. Among the incredible, to say fortunate does not fully convey the miracle, finds in the ruins of ancient cities and their libraries are clay prisms inscribed with the very information about the 10 pre-diluvial rulers and their 432,000 years total reign to which Berosus had referred, known as the Sumerian King Lists and on display at the Ashmolean Museum, Oxford, England. Their several versions leave no doubt that their Sumerian compilers had access to some earlier common or canonized textual material. Coupled with other equally early texts discovered in various states of preservation, they strongly suggest that the original recorder of the arrival, as well as of preceding events and certainly of following events, had to be one of those leaders, a key participant, an eyewitness. One who had been an eyewitness to all those events, indeed, a key participant in them, was the leader who had splashed down with the first group of astronauts. At that time, his epithet name was Ea, he whose home is water. He experienced the disappointment of having command of Earth mission given to his half-brother and rival Enlil, Lord of the Command, a humiliation little mitigated by granting him the title Enki, Lord of Earth, relegated away from the cities of the gods and their spaceport in the Eden to supervise the mining of gold in the Abzu in southeastern Africa. It was Ea, Enki, a great scientist who came across the hominids who inhabited those parts. And so when the Anunnaki, toiling in the gold mines, mutinied and said no more, it was he who realized that the needed manpower could be obtained by jumping the gun on evolution through genetic engineering. And thus did the Adam, literally, he of the earth, earthling, come into being. As a hybrid, the Adam could not procreate. The events echoed in the biblical tale of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden record the second genetic manipulation by Enki that added the extra chromosomal genes needed for sexual procreation. And when mankind, proliferating, did not turn out the way it had been envisioned, it was he, Enki, who defied his brother Enlil's plan to let mankind perish in the deluge, the events whose hero has been called Noah in the Bible and Ziusudra in the earlier original Sumerian text. The firstborn son of Anu, Nibiru's ruler, Ea Enki, was well versed in his planets, Nibiru, and its inhabitants past. An accomplished scientist, he bequeathed the most important aspects of the advanced knowledge of the Anunnaki, especially to his two sons, Marduk and Ningishzida, who as Egyptian gods were known there as Ra and Thoth, respectively. But he also was instrumental in sharing with mankind certain aspects of such advanced knowledge by teaching to selected individuals the secrets of the gods. In at least 2 instances, such initiates wrote down, as they were instructed to, those divine teachings as mankind's heritage. One, called Adapa, and probably a son of Enki by a human female, is known to have written a book titled Writings Regarding Time, one of the earliest lost books. The other, called Enmi Duranki, was in all probability the prototype of the biblical Enoch, the one who was taken up to heaven after he had entrusted to his sons the book of divine secrets, and of which a version has possibly survived in the extra-biblical book of Enoch. Though the firstborn of Anu, he was not destined to be his father's successor on the throne of Nibiru. Complex rules of succession, which reflected the convoluted history of the Nibirians, gave that privilege to Enki's half-brother Enlil. In the effort to resolve the bitter conflict, both Enki and Enlil ended up on a mission to an alien planet, Earth, whose gold was needed to create a shield for preserving Nibiru's dwindling atmosphere. It was against that background, made even more complex by the presence on Earth of their half-sister Ninursag, the chief medical officer of the Anunnaki, that Enki decided to defy Enlil's plan to have mankind perish in the deluge. The conflict carried on between the two half-brothers' sons, even amongst their grandchildren. The fact that all of them, and especially those born on Earth, faced the loss of longevity that Nibiru's extended orbital period provided, added personal agonies and sharpened ambitions. It all came to a climax in the last century of the 3rd millennium BC, when Marduk, Enki's firstborn by his official spouse, claimed that he and not Enlil's firstborn son Ninurta should inherit the earth. The bitter conflict that included a series of wars led in the end to the use of nuclear weapons. The ensuing, though unintended, result was the demise of the Sumerian civilization. The initiation of chosen individuals into the secrets of the gods had marked the beginning of priesthood, the lineages of mediators between the gods and the people, the transmitters of the divine words to the mortal earthlings. Oracles, interpretations of divine utterances, were commingled with the observation of the heavens for omens, and as mankind was increasingly drawn to take sides in the godly conflicts, prophecy began to play a role. Indeed, the term to denote such spokesmen of the gods who proclaimed what was to come, Nabihe, was the epithet for Marduk's firstborn son, Nabu, who had tried on behalf of his exiled father to convince mankind that the heavenly signs bespoke the coming supremacy of Marduk. These developments sharpened the realization that one must distinguish between fate and destiny. The proclamations of Enlil, sometimes even of Anu, that used to be unquestioned, were now subjected to the scrutiny of the difference between Nam, a destiny, like the planetary orbits whose course had been determined and was unchangeable, and Nam-Tar, literally a destiny that could be bent, broken, changed. which was fate. Reviewing and recalling the sequence of events and the apparent parallelism between what had happened on Nibiru and what took place on Earth, Enki and Enlil began to ponder philosophically what indeed was destined and could not have been avoided, and what was just fated as a consequence of right or wrong decisions and free choice. The latter could not be predicted. The former could be foreseen, especially if all, as the planetary orbits, was cyclical, if what was shall again be, if the first things shall also be the last things.